you. It's quite an honor to be up here on this panel with some of the people up here that I've admired for the past few years in the sustainability field. So thank you. So looking at results, okay, there are a couple people who have never heard of life cycle assessment. That's great. I was actually hoping for that. And then a couple who have experience with it, a good amount actually, half of the people in the room. Amazing, great. So for those of you who don't know, life cycle assessment is a common analytical and standardized data measurement technique that you can use when designing, comparing, or improving the sustainability of a product or a technology. And what I hope to offer you a glimpse of today is what might happen when you combine corporate social responsibility principles, or CSR principles, with environmental LCA techniques. And hopefully you'll come away with a better idea on why you should be considering social issues in your supply chains, in the very lower tiers of your supply chains, and how you can start investigating these impacts. As many of you know, and as Jay pointed out to us, I don't think anyone else has mentioned it yet, but the 3 pillars of sustainability, you can consider them people, planet, and profit, the 3 Ps. Environment, society, and economy is another one that people use commonly. But truthfully, sustainability was a concept created by man and woman, and meant to sustain man and woman. And so the earth will be here long after humans are walking on it, and the economy only exists basically as a fabrication of society. So while I'm definitely a strong advocate for protecting the planet by minimizing our emissions, waste, water use, I recognize that what we're truly trying to uphold and improve the quality of is human existence. So that social aspect to me is of great importance. Many companies are already seeing the impact of the impact of reducing their impact to the environmental sphere and improving the quality of work for their own employees. What is more difficult to see is that our impact actually extends far beyond our facilities' walls, beyond the colleagues' faces that we see each day, and beyond the geographical radius where our products and services are used. So there's plenty of existing global initiatives and advocacy groups out there whose mission is to protect workers and communities in the bottom tiers of the supply chain. Those that mine, manufacture, and farm the commodities and goods, the components of our products. The UN Global Compact Initiative is one, for example, and this initiative invites companies to implement 10 universally recognized principles in the areas of human rights, labor standards, environmental protection, and anti-corruption. And there are also a lot of tools and measurement and reporting systems out there. But until there are legal retributions behind it, injustices to the poor and powerless will continue. In 2012, at the Clinton Global Initiative annual meeting in New York City, President Obama reminded the audience of the exploitation of over 20 million men, women, and children that's occurring at home and abroad where they are forced into labor practices. To lead by example, he signed an executive order that the White House, one of the largest purchasers of goods and services in the world, must ensure that its contractors and subcontractors do not engage in forced labor. In California, they enacted the Transparency in Supply Chains Act in 2010, and this requires California companies to actually provide information about their efforts to ensure that human trafficking is not involved in their supply chains. And then the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act had a provision within it that actually requires some US companies and foreign companies to report whether they're using so-called conflict minerals from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and adjoining countries. So the legal retributions are starting to pop up. So for the most part, these initiatives are still voluntary other than these very few. And abuses and disasters like the collapse in Bangladesh, suicides in Chinese factories, or even the explosion at the fertilizer plant in Texas still prevail. And we have to realize that this is not just happening in the developing world, that it's actually happening in our own country. Even if our products are completely US made, there are hidden abuses to migrant workers, there's wages that are not meeting a living wage for most workers, and there's also a lack of social benefits for many workers. These are noteworthy injustices right in our backyard that we should be aware of. Examples of catastrophes in human rights inequities riddle our supply chains, and many go uncovered because it's such a complex thing to study. The companies that should be held accountable are not, because their names are not attached to the jeopardized factories or farms. I'm optimistic this is starting to change. With social media, educated consumers and companies that they serve are starting to lead and make it a priority that they investigate the human and labor rights abuses that are potentially embedded in all of our products. When it comes to environmental impacts, calculating carbon emissions, for example, across a supply chain or a life cycle, while it's not necessarily simple, it is a quantifiable number. Goals can be set and progress is tracked. There are standardized methods like carbon accounting, carbon footprinting, greenhouse gas accounting, life cycle assessment that are all available. LCA is a standardized methodology that takes into account all of the water, chemical, resource, and land use inputs at each phase in the life cycle of a product. The data assessment also then provides outputs of chemicals to air, water, and soil, which can be grouped into impact categories, such as greenhouse gas emissions, resource use, human health, or biodiversity risk, and others. While this method isn't used universally yet, it's becoming more and more common, and there are tools that are more user-friendly out there, and you don't need to be an expert in the field of LCA to use them. Anyone in your company with a little bit of technical savvy can pick this up. When you make an effort to quantify your emissions, reduce your impact, and track a decline over time, this is a huge reputation boost for your company, as I'm sure most of you know. So when it comes to measuring social sustainability of a product, however, a standardized method is still out for debate and testing. The theory behind social LCA was put into motion in 2009 with a UNEP CTEC initiative. Guidelines for research were established and case studies were performed, and the nonprofit organization I work for, which many of you probably have never heard of, called New Earth, we're a little bit similar to Climate Counts in that we do sustainability reporting for companies. We led the way in an assessment of over 100 generic products for the Sustainability Consortium. The Sustainability Consortium is a membership organization for corporations who want to invest in sustainability research. We propose that since supply chains are so complex and hard to track, the first step in a product assessment should be to identify the areas of the supply chain with the greatest risk for potential social issues. These are called hotspots. So I'm showing a couple hotspots up there. They can be both positive and negative. You can see it's a little hard to see, I'm sorry, but this is a little supply chain for a t-shirt. There's actually some boundaries drawn here. It would be much more complex. But you can see that perhaps you find out that in the country and the sector of sewing cotton, the people might not be being paid a living wage. Or perhaps in the cotton farms, you find that you're able to purchase fair trade certified cotton. A hotspot, it's a process along a supply chain, is associated with a country and a sector, and where companies may want to take action to improve or highlight their social responsibility, where they should focus their efforts for the greatest improvement of social conditions, but not necessarily pull out or stop sourcing from a particular country. For example, this is really what a supply chain might look like. So to be able to identify where the hotspots are is really a critical tool before diving into an assessment. As a response, the researchers at New Earth developed a top-down global and sector view data set called the Social Hotspots Database. It's based on a worker hours model that uses global input-output data and country and sector-specific wage rates to identify labor intensity by country-specific sector. A little complicated. I won't get into too much detail about the model. But the model also works in collaboration with 22 social theme tables that hold 100 social indicators that are also by country and sector. And these are characterized by level of risk or opportunity to affect. The indicators are also, thus, where worker hours are high and where there's a high risk for social issues, this might be a hotspot in your supply chain where you may want to do a little more site-specific investigations. The Social Hotspot Database can be used in 2 platforms. The simpler version is accessed on our website in a web portal. This is a view of one of the visualizations you can look at of risks by country, and there's actually a sector chosen there. If you can't see it, it's the coal sector is chosen. The more complex version is available for LCA software systems, and this includes the worker hours modeling capability. On the website, you can interactively develop visualizations to understand risks by country and sector, either in map form or in a bar chart form. Tools like this can help companies start to determine their social impact by understanding the risks that workers and communities face around the world. This is just a first step, however. Performing social life cycle assessments that are quantitative and practical are of great interest to companies and sustainability professionals, as it should be. The field of CSR has been around for decades, and environmental LCAs are becoming more of the norm. These are just our stepping stones. Finding a method that successfully combines both is inevitably the next step on a journey to reducing our impact in our consumer culture and creating products that are sustainable at all levels. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions. I'll be around all day. Thank you.